today?
Hello. Hello, everybody. I'm so glad to be here with my dear friend Denise R. And we were just reminiscing about how we met. I mean, we've met in person, but we met in this program about 4 years ago. I think it was about 4 years ago because
Yeah,
the book, um, Happiness is Running Through the Streets to Find You, came out early March 2020, just during COVID. And
right.
that's when
It
the
was right
program
with
started.
COVID.
Yeah, and you were with the same organization. You were in Toledo with Head Start, right?
Right.
Yeah, and yeah. So anyway, it's been changing all the time, and it's also been consistent all the time. And folk, if you're just joining us, I'm really glad you're here. I'll ask Denise to introduce herself after I tell you that I'm Holly Elissa Bruno. I am a gratefully recovering trauma survivor. That does not mean I'm grateful for the abuse or the cruelty or the threats or the incest. I'm not grateful for those things. I hold people accountable for them. At the same time, I'm grateful for the choices that I've made and continue to make as a trauma survivor to have my life, to have my life, to live my life, to find ways to face the stuff that that's sometimes used to feel impossible, to face it, to feel it. That's new to me, Denise, to sit there and feel it. I didn't know I had to do that. I choose to do that now. And COVID helped me sit there and do that. And then to ask for help. I was taught, like a lot of trauma survivors, you can't do something. If you want something done right, do it yourself. And that didn't necessarily mean I was being applauded for doing something right. That meant don't bother me. Don't bother me and don't trust anybody. That's what that message was.
Right.
So here I am at 78, and I learn every day, as you do, as trauma survivors do, if we choose to, learn how to. One way to say it is get my life back. But another way to say it is how to face my demons, shake hands with them. Hi, guys. Hello, terror. Hello, panic attacks. I've known you my whole life. Let's just level with each other. I don't like you. I don't like having you. But I know what you like and I know what's going on. And guess what? I've come to discover something new. I've come to discover that a panic attack is a precursor to healing if I don't run away from it. So we're gathering every week at 3 o'clock East Coast U.S. time. Eight. If you were with us when we were based in Cambridge, United Kingdom, we started at 8 o'clock at night. And Denise and I were just talking about reaching out to some of our old friends in England to see if they want to rejoin us, because that would be a delight to see where they are in their trauma recovery. So I want to say one more thing. The program is for you. It's for me. It's for Denise. It's spontaneous. It's truth telling. It's not about shaming or blaming anybody. I might hold people accountable, but that does not mean that I expect them to heal me. It doesn't work. For me, it doesn't work that way. I need to make the choices. I choose to make the choices. The other thing I want to say is if you're in the United States and if at any point you feel like something I say or Denise and I are talking about bothers you, you have a bunch of choices. You don't have to stay. If you're feeling like, I don't want to do this anymore, that's okay. You can say goodbye. You can reach out to one of us or both of us one on one, and we will definitely get back to you. And the other thing you can do is take care of yourself, step away. I just got myself some cider. Get yourself something to drink, breathe.
Water.
Denise, water. Denise got a whole bunch of things she does too to take care of herself. I always put on favorite earrings. I was just telling Denise, every one of my earrings has a story. And this story is I went to see a friend of mine in Brattleboro, Vermont. We have both together of us have a dear friend that's just gone through a horrible treatment for cancer and it didn't work. And now she's chosen to start again. And so when I went to the store and we were sharing with each other. Somebody, a woman named Lizzie, brought these earrings in. She said, I got to return them. They're not working for me. My neck is too short. So I said, Lizzie, girl, let me try this. I tried them and I said, I'm going to take those. So one of the things I do in my life, I just want to ask Denise, what's one thing you do in your life? And everybody who's listening, what's one thing you do in your life to remind yourself life is full of life and worth living? And as Denise is reflecting on that, I need to finish the sentence which says, if you're in the United States and you feel unsafe at any time when we're together, go online. Ready for this? To Warm Line for Trauma. Warm, not hotline, warm line. And you'll discover that all across the United States, there's a number you can call specific to your area, specific to your state. And you're just calling somebody who's not going to judge you. It's not going to like say what's sick about you. It's going to say, tell me what's going on. And they're going to follow Walt Whitman's be curious, not judgmental. There are people that have been through trauma too and know what it's like and are here to listen and soothe and comfort and just be fellow travelers, which is a lot of what we can do sometimes is just be there for each other. So if you find in your state, for example, Tennessee, when I was last there, did not have a warm line for trauma. You know what? Just look at the nearby states. Cincinnati got one. And you know what? The one in Cincinnati says you can call from anywhere in the United States. I'm not sure about, Africa or India. But we're inviting now. If you're from another country, if you're from a country that is not United States, yippee skippy, and just tell us if you've got a warm line for trauma too, because it's a great thing that we're doing to help each other out. So, okay, so Denise, I wear my funky earrings. What do you do? What's just one thing you do for yourself as a survivor that helps you go back to loving life?
Story time.
And if people don't know, if they are just listening for the first time, story time means a whole lot to me. But girl, what does it mean to you? What is story time?
It's a music and movement literacy preschool program, 45-minute hour. Well, really, it's a full hour. Actually, I get there an hour early, but put down the floor and get the toys cleaned up and all that. But it's music and movement, everything, all the songs that typical preschool teachers use, and everything has props. And right now, I do it in a coffee shop and at an ability center for their activities programs. And it's super
What's
fun.
what's what's an ability center?
The Ability Center is a program in Toledo
Mhm.
that serves people with disabilities.
But it's called Ability Center.
Right.
I love that. So when you
Yeah.
go there, are you working with people of all ages?
I do story time there. I also attend their yoga and chair yoga program
Right.
to be
You,
with people, with different abilities.
so do you lead any of those programs there?
Story time. I
You
do story
do.
time
All
twice
right.
a
So
month. Yeah.
so what's a story that, and we all know, guys, stories for children are stories by adults that are connecting with children. Every story has its own message. I love to ask people that read stories to children, what's your favorite story? And what's the message of the story? And there's a whole hour right there to just talk about why that book matters to them. So what's a book that you have used with the otherwise able adults?
The adults, I don't. It's with
Okay.
children. I
Okay.
just, yeah, I just participate with the adult program in their yoga classes. There's a
Like,
different facilitator, but I just like to hang out with them. My best friend is autistic, actually. So, but he won't go to the ability center, of course, but
okay. But he's your best friend, so he's a smart cookie.
yeah.
So what's a book that you
For the
share
children,
with the children there? Yeah.
I use every one of the songs has a book that goes with it, like
Okay.
Five Little Monkeys Jumping on the Bed, or Brown Bear, walking through the jungle We Are the Dinosaurs. Each of the songs that I do with props also has a book.
Mm. And so if you were to think of one book, last week we talked about Brown Bear.
It's my
What,
favorite.
yeah, I understand why. What's a book that really helps a child who is otherwise able? And guys, if you're not familiar with this language, back in the day, people who had different talents, different abilities, were called all kinds of awful names. And then it started, like I have an aunt who was, the R word was used about her a lot. In my classes, there was a place they all were sent off to. Um, they were separated. There were asylums that people were sent to. And then things started getting a little bit better, where I think the word handicapped started being used. That
Right.
was still troublesome. And then we got to the point where the word handicapped was replaced with disability. And then a number of us are using words like otherwise able,
Differently able.
differently
Now
able.
I like to use neurodivergent a lot because it's a spectrum and that's exactly, and we're all on it.
Honey, I love neurodivergent. It's the softest term ever. And I use that a lot for my son, who has been called all those other things. He's 40 years old now. And neurodivergent feels the most honest and the most accepting.
Yeah,
Why is that? What's different about
because
neurodivergent?
we can all find ourselves in that neurodivergent spectrum. I think that's why I love it because like I tell my coworkers I'm neurodivergent. They're like, "No, you're not." I go, "Yeah, I am."
And what do they say? What do you mean? Prove it. I mean, they wouldn't say it like that, but if they were to say, "Come on, what do you mean?"
Well, they think because of the success that they see me conducting myself, they don't they don't understand the challenges to have that. But we all have challenges. Everyone has challenges, you know? It,
So, what's one of your challenges that you are, have faced, learned to face, and it helps you be who you are today?
Interestingly, that I'm a non-reader.
No, you said that from the get-go. What do you mean by
I do
non?
story time about all about books, and I teach children to read. I tutor in phonics, but I don't read for pleasure ever. I
And tell us about that, sweetie. So you wouldn't read, like you wouldn't read
I
a,
didn't
a
even read
fix.
your book when I
I
bought the
remember.
book, right?
I know.
And you would read parts of it and I could go along with it, but I just don't read books. My other friends wrote a book about sexual harassment, which I donated to their production of the book. And
Good.
so I received a book. And so then they have these book signings afterwards, and people go talk about what they read. And the whole time I'm sitting there going, please don't ask me if I read it. Please don't ask
Mhm,
me if I read it because I just don't read books. I do read Facebook,
mhm.
but those are little bits. They don't, and it's over here, over here, over here, over here. I don't have to follow. Uh, I guess I'm oppositional resistant to sticking with one topic, or I don't know. I,
Well, I hear you. Like, I think where you were going with that was what my son got labeled as one of the many things, which was ODD, oppositional defiant disorder.
right.
And yet the neuroscientist that at Children's Hospital in Boston that I waited 8 months to get him into, she said to me, we can't give an easy diagnosis, but I can tell you this. And she left me with an image which has stayed with me forever. She said to be in his mind is like, just picture a bunch of hornets, angry hornets, and they're moving around and they're moving around. And sometimes they land, a lot of times they don't, they scatter. And so I help me get I mean, I help me understand. I sometimes see when I'm with him that there's a kaleidoscope being turned. And sometimes the kaleidoscope lands as kaleidoscopes can on those beautiful colors, the wondrous, imaginative colors. And sometimes the kaleidoscope lands with all of these jagged, like shards of glass.
Don't
Yes,
try it. Right.
don't even, right. And so
Right.
when I remember that that's the way his mind works, then I also am so grateful for the moments like when he was a little guy, Denise, and he said to me, Mom, he always has this way because he got autism as being on the spectrum was another diagnosis he got.
Right.
He often says, Mom, Mom, it's not angry, it's just his voice. Mom, when I die, what happens to God? I said, wow, Cole, that's a really, I'm really touched by that question. I don't know how to answer it, but I want to consider it. Let's talk about that. Okay. And well, not mom, not now, Mom, because and he was off doing something with his action figures or something. But you know what? When the kaleidoscope turns just right, I get a glimpse, and then a kaleidoscope turns another way, and I might get stung.
Right.
And what I know, it's like nobody like you on earth, Denise, but I know people who have a similar situation. The one friend of mine who's a very successful interior design person, she tells me, don't tell anybody, but I never read a book. Somebody else said to me, I don't read chapter books. I read a chapter book. And that's what you're talking about. It's the
Right.
stars here, goes
It's
there.
like such a huge commitment, you know? But even a thin book, like if it's a book, it's not for me.
Like if you look at the pages here, this one page is like the traditional book. Most of the pages in my book have these
Right.
inserts because
Which I could do those. Yeah, I could
right,
do those. I could
I
fly through and just read the little snippets. Right.
right. And
I
that's
that was helpful. Yeah, that I could read parts of it.
And that's the way my mind works. I need to have something to focus on because if it's just the straight stuff, unless I get engaged, it doesn't work. But I know that that's what we require of all children. I don't think
Right.
all children have that capacity. Denise, what do you think?
I agree. Just like, like I was in college before I knew that I was smart, that I had some type of intelligence. Before that, I did not believe it. I thought I was not smart. And
Because
two thirds of our students feel that.
you've mentioned that before, that you said the top one third gets told.
Right.
They get told, yeah, you got a future.
They're the smarts, right? They're
And
the
the
one
non
they're the
smarts,
But you know
my
what? When
well,
those book smart people, those studious folks with lovely vocabularies and whatnot, they love it when somebody fixes their car.
because I wouldn't know how to do it.
Right.
They love it
Exactly.
when somebody solves a computer problem.
Right.
Love it when
So,
somebody knows how to give a shot because
right. That's why our school system should be designed in a way that each of the styles of learning are honored in their with their peers and their teachers. And then maybe 3 times a school year, we get together and appreciate each other's smartness.
how would that look? Supposing you were doing that in an elementary school, how would that look?
Well, like the really brilliant children could recite poetry. The ones that do are book smart could demonstrate things that they've learned for the others. It's like a talent show, but all the talents are appreciated, not just that one type.
My God, just so one child might bring in car, a car that he's made or that
A
she has
Lego
made.
construction or something. Some
A
kids
Lego
get very,
construction.
very set on that, or that's their style, that's what makes them tick to build something out of blocks and they
Some
would bring
kids,
theirs in.
oh yeah, bring in the Lego. Or back in my day, because I'm 78, there used to be this soap, something derby, soap car derby or something.
Right.
And
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 everybody made it. Well, their dads usually made them, I think, but
but there were girls and guys, more guys, but there were girls whose dads would work with them, and they would make these out of wood and like wheels, and they'd hammer stuff
right.
together, and they'd go careening down a hill. And I thought that was brilliant.
It is
Or
brilliant.
talk about Head Start. I know a Head Start also in Hawaii, in Ohio, where there was a teacher. I'll name her name. Her name was Jean. Was it Germaine? And Germaine had a lot of kids that were not self confident. Of course, so trauma survivors not self confident, and there are a lot of different types of trauma. So what she
Right.
did
And
was,
poverty is trauma.
poverty is just not just, it is another huge factor
Right. It's a
for trauma.
traumatic experience.
Poverty is trauma. Race is trauma.
Yeah.
Gender leads to trauma.
Yep.
All of that stuff leads to trauma, and yet we act as if we're just supposed to do the British stiff upper lip thing. I want to tell
Right.
you,
La 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 la. All these
it's
kids
all
are all
good.
so great.
And
Right.
that's like calling it, that's like saying dissociation is okay.
Right.
What I mean by dissociation is I learned as a child all kinds of ways to get out of my body because it was so painful to live in a body which had been so demeaned. My father was sexually abusing me. My father was beating me. I couldn't tell anybody. What I could do was race. When I raced, I felt like there's something beautiful here. I can do this. I can win. And that was, sure, I was in my body, but I was also dissociating from my body because I was dissociating from what I didn't and couldn't tell anybody about my body. I want to tell you about Miss Germain at Head Start, I think in Akron. And she just moved out of the classroom, Denise, because at a certain age it gets harder to be on the floor.
Right. That's what happened to me.
I mean, we need to be on the floor with the kids, and I can't get up off the floor anymore
Right.
without like yanking me up. Anyway, Jermaine did this great rap song with the kids, and she said even the shyest child in the class wanted to lead the rap song. And here, I'll just try to remember it. You want to rap with me? You just have to repeat what I'm saying. Okay.
Okay.
Um, I know this.
I know this.
I got this.
I got this.
Don't worry about me.
Don't worry about me.
I know my ABCs.
I know my ABCs.
I count by 1, 2, 3.
I count by 1, 2, 3.
Don't worry about me.
Don't worry about me.
I know this.
I know this.
I got this.
I got this.
My name is Eddie C.
My name is Denise.
I love it. So here's what Jermaine did. All those kids, they're rapping, they're moving, they're moving. And we know that just movement gets the lymphatic system going, and that's healing in and of itself. And the rhythmic, anytime we do something rhythmic, it helps our heart get in rhythm with the people around us. And every time we go outside for 10 minutes, we get in the rhythms of nature. I mean, it's healing. And so here's Jermaine, and she said, every one of these kids wants to lead the song, even the shyest kid. And if somebody, like my fear as a child will be, I'll forget something and I'll be embarrassed of myself and ashamed of myself. And people say, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. No, somebody forgets something, they all sing, you got this. You got this. You know this. You know this. Don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. Listen, after I was with that group, I went to presented a NACI, National Association for the Education of Young Children conference. I do a lot of spontaneous things when I'm presenting. So in the middle of it, I start singing, you know this. Just rap with me, guys.
You know this, right?
You got this.
You got this.
Don't worry about me.
Don't worry about me.
I know I'm at NAEYC. Anyway, then people started getting up and they started doing their, don't worry about me.
Right.
And so what I'm saying here is when you talk about having a school where children who have different abilities have their abilities honored as much as the traditional white
Privileged.
privileged way of being honored. We all got it. You got it. I got it. That the way to
Right.
succeed was to be able to do well in school. Doing well in school meant doing what the teachers needed us to do. Now, I was
And
enough. Go ahead, sweetie.
they even did studies when I was in college, which was a few years after yours, um, where how many times boys got called on more than girls, or
No.
how many
Yeah.
boys were questioned, which that has changed a lot. But that was just being acknowledged when I was learning to be a teacher, let alone this diversity of learning styles. Teachers taught people who were attracted to teaching, because I started in elementary ed,
Yeah.
which is
Right. I
quite
remember.
different, yeah,
Yes, it is. Yeah.
than early childhood. Early childhood is way more my cup of tea because of the way it's organized.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the first classroom that I worked in. A woman told a little boy, "Take that hat off. Boys don't wear hats." It was like a little bonnet. I go, anybody can wear hats. I was just volunteering in the classroom that day, and I probably should have piped down, but I go, boys can wear. Here, you want to wear this dress? Totally.
I
Which I was
remember.
always on the cutting edge of that gender
You got it.
acceptance, and promoting boys could be fathers. Of course, they can play with dolls. Boys can cook. Boys can dress up.
Didn't
You
you
know,
have the Fathers Club or something?
yeah,
These
I had
guys that
little daddy club, right?
Daddy Club, because the guys were like, they were kids that had kids in their families that they were looking out for.
Right.
And they were very natural at like taking care of the little ones.
Yep.
Daddy's Club. I love it. I want to tell you about my friend Janie, who has been my friend since we were 4. And Janie was in the 2/3. I mean, Janie was smart, but smart in her own way, not in the way that
Right.
students that got measured. Janie like had a really good voice, for example. And she wrote a paper and she got a C on it. She was back in the day, they had the redbirds, the bluebirds, and the bluebirds were the ones that were teachers
Just
loved
behind.
them. They
Right.
fit in. And then the redbirds were a little bit down, but still had some possibilities. And you kept going. Anyway, Janie was in the kept going group. When we got to high school, literally the kept going group was kept on the first floor. And the rest of us got to like each year move up a level. But Janie wrote a paper and she got a C on it. And then a friend of both of ours, who was in my classes, which was the approved of classes, because I didn't have a choice. Excuse me. Anyway, we'll call the friend Jimmy. Jimmy said, "Hey, Janie, hey, you got a paper? I didn't get a paper done. You got a paper I can just hand in?" She said, "Oh, sure, here." And it didn't. She said, let me take the grade off and stuff. But the teacher hadn't written anything except C. And so back in the day, those erasers that used to make all that mess all over the place. Anyway,
Right.
she
Little rubber specs.
you got it. So Jimmy handed in Janie's paper. Guess what grade Jimmy got?
A.
Yeah, got an A. And Janie said, that did it. I just knew. I knew. My friend Carol, she died about 5 years ago. She and I were buddies, and her nickname was Bunny. And Bunny got told when we went into ninth grade, she got told you don't want to take those college prep courses. You're not going to go to college. And she said, oh, yes, I am. And the teacher said, no, you're not. Excuse me, the guidance counselor said, no, you're not. You're going to be like your mother. You're going to become someone's cook.
My
Funny.
my
Yeah.
eighth grade teacher told my mom, don't waste your money in sending her to Catholic high school. And and my mom still tells this story and she graduated from college.
Good for your mom for saying that. I'm glad she
Right. That was
does.
one time she stood for me, but
And we remember those times, right? The
we
one
do, yeah.
time, because
But yeah,
those,
Sister Joan of Arc from Queen of the Almost Holy Rosary Cathedral.
oh, right, right, right. I used to joke about friends of mine going to Our Lady of Perpetual Guilt.
That guilt still comes.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm
honey,
65, but I was
let's,
12 years in Catholic schools.
wow. And yet, look what happened. They did see your ability. You were a really good writer. I would never have been chosen for my writing. You were a really good writer, and they used to have you copy things out, right? Because that's something you could do. But at the same time, rather than address why you weren't reading, they just passed you on up to the next. And
Yeah, I was a pass. They passed me along
what
every year.
stopped what stopped that? Who finally said, Denise, you're a smart cookie. You can read. You can
Miss Brown, she was a freshman English teacher at the end of the school year.
okay.
We used to have some antics outside of her classroom too, teasing her. Like we would sneak in. There was an overhead window, so we'd
Remember that?
climb over it and turn all the desks the other way or move the room around. We messed with her, but she loved it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
she just said, "You're not reading." I go, "No, I'm not." And so then when we came back sophomore, I was in a remedial, we used microfiche. Remember that?
I
Evelyn
do.
Wood, Evelyn Wood reading course. And the microfiche would go choo, 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 to keep
Just
going to new words.
it's just in case there's somebody with us that has not heard the word microfiche or fiche, whatever. What is that?
It was a machine that you stuck. It was, I don't know, it was like transparent, maybe stuff, but the way that this machine worked for me was information was stored. It was before information was stored on, well, the next thing was the cards for the computer, remember? They would
Right.
type in cards, but microfiche was before that. So you'd feed it through almost like a film strip projector, only instead of projecting it, it was just right here. And come to find out, if they read me the questions, I could answer the questions just by, because my problem was I would stop. If I didn't know a word, I would perseverate or whatever that word is on that one word and then not get and become so frustrated that I couldn't do anything then.
Oh, I
So,
understand that.
yeah, so this machine took a light and just lit up one word at a time and it kept going. If I missed that word, oh, whoops, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And
If you
so
missed that word, maybe you learned it. Did you
I
learn some of
still
those
could,
words?
right? I still could answer the question. So,
Yeah. And what they just did was to acknowledge the way you learn. That's
yeah.
all they had to do was acknowledge the way you learn. There's a woman, she's in her 20s, from Fitchburg, Mass, where I live, and her name is, she's got a beautiful name. It's very Lavender. Her name is Lavender. And Lavender was on America's Got Talent. And Lavender has a number of, she's otherwise able in a number of ways. And when she sings, she just brings down the house. And her dream, which she said to zillions of people who are watching America's Got Talent, and she meets this, her dream is to have schools where every child is valued and every child's way of learning can be taught to can be capitalized on. She said, I was in school and I didn't know what was going on. I mean, how many of us have not been in school and not know what's going on, but we pretended,
Right.
and
Masking. We fake it. We
fake it
fake.
is
Yeah.
right. And after a while, here's the problem. After a while, the false or fake self, we know
Right.
that that's more
And
acceptable.
right. And then so then in your inauthentic presentation, then whatever you get back is not trustworthy. You don't believe the love, you don't believe the respect, you don't believe the things that people might say or see on you
For
because
example, no, you're right, Denise. Go ahead and finish.
I am
Well, yeah, because how can I believe it? If I know it's not really me, it's an act. If I'm acting to get
right.
approval, if I'm a people pleaser and I'm acting to get approval, and you're telling me what a great person I am, I'm going, yeah, you don't even begin to know who I am.
Right. You
I
don't
mean, what
even
a
know me. Right.
you don't know me. You don't know me. I mean, that's Ray Charles, right? He was singing for all of us. Oh God, I was raised in such a traditional way that each one of us, my two older sisters and I, had to take the singer sewing course so that we could be competent in sewing because that's what girls did.
Right.
And I hated it from the get-go because I was a tom girl. I didn't want to be like a girl because girls had restrictions. It's not that I
Right.
minded girls, but I didn't want to be restricted. I'm out there climbing trees. I'm out there digging holes. I'm out there being into stuff. I'm getting in fights with boys and I'm doing all this stuff because I want to live. I don't want to do the girly girl stuff because no, just didn't, it would seem too restricted for me. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Act like a lady, man. I hated that.
Oh, man, why should I have to
Oh,
keep my knees together when those guys can do
right.
whatever they want to? Why
Right.
can't I wear pants to school?
Right. It
I
was
to
my
wear
freshman year. It was the first year we could wear pants.
that not bite. I mean,
Look.
even in my women's college in 1963, we were required to, because it was like supposed to be respectful, it's a class thing, we were required to wear skirts to dinner, the sit down served meal. And then that was nice. And there were often people that would come in and talk with us and help us learn different things. Like, I don't remember this, but somebody came in and taught us how to eat artichokes. Now, how many of us were raised eating artichokes? Not me.
No.
So I learned, we learned how to do that. But here's how we got around that. We all wore our pants and our Levi's and all this stuff. And we had in the basement of this beautiful, like early 20th century dining hall, we called our Cooper skirts because the dining hall was Cooper dining hall. We just, take our skirt, which was often a wraparound or wrap it around. It's walk upstairs,
Right.
the
Right.
whole thing, but the whole thing, my parents were insistent upon our being ladylike. I don't think they knew what they were conveying, but it was really a class message.
Right.
If you want to make it, you got to get the trappings so that you can be accepted. I tell you, when I lived in
Right.
England for a year, it was America. I found out that Americans can be very confusing to British people because in Britain you can put somebody in a cast right away. We know exactly where you're from. Boom, boom, boom. So
Right.
American opens her mouth and might have a Midwestern accent, might have an upstate New York accent, might have a Southern accent, and you can't tell right away what class the person is from. And the Brits were telling me this is very confusing. However, I love it's about you've talked about masks. Well, there's another word that's come out in the last 5 years about coding. It's like coding our words so that we are accepted.
Right. Into different groups, which I tend to have a variety of groups that I hang around with. And I, at one time, would be different with each group. Like I didn't have a truth. I had this truth and that truth and this truth and that truth, but none of them were really truth.
And you know
Yeah, it
what?
was,
And how did you feel about that? Do you remember?
that's when I, my first experience with official therapy, I did do a lot of self-help. All my teenage years, and
Yep.
I started getting interested in the self-help stuff. But the first therapist I went to in Richmond, Virginia, I was a teacher there, special ed, early childhood class. I loved that. It was one of the last separate schools for special ed, which I loved. They had so many good services. It was so much better for the children, in my opinion. But they gave us mental health. Uh, go to a therapist if you want to go to a therapist. So I
Oh,
went
that's
to yeah. So I went to this therapist, and I said, "You have 5 weeks. I have 5 sessions to for you to cure me. I am a person that has no feelings." I felt like I was feelingless because I was inauthentic, basically. So I she goes, "Well, if you're honest with me this for each session, I can help you." And I said,
Ooh.
"Okay, let's do this."
All right. So what did you
So
guys do?
we did a thesaurus project on each of the feelings. I would spend the whole whatever 7, 8, 10 days in between our sessions writing all the words that could possibly be associated with love, anger, happy, sad. I ended up making a feelings chart for my classroom. That was my first feelings chart in the classroom too, because I wanted it to help work. That's why I went.
Yeah.
They paid me to go, or they paid for my visits. So I'm gonna do something for them. So I made the help feelings chart, angry, excited, and I thesaurused every word. I had a full page on every one of those feelings. I still have it. It's down in the basement. I'm going to pull it up and review it. I haven't looked at it in a while,
That
but
sounds really powerful. Did that help you actually
amazing.
feel the feelings?
No. What it taught me was that I don't have extreme feelings. I have, there's so many variations in the expressions of each one. And yes, I can find myself there. I can find myself there. I can find myself there. So that's how it helped me.
So you're just saying something that's so powerful for, I think, all learners, but especially for trauma surviving kids, that we take in the moment what we have in front of us and we make it work and we learn what we can.
Yep.
Then, based upon that step that we've taken, we can take another step up
Exactly.
and another step up.
So
I mean,
that was my first step, was to acknowledge that yes, indeed, I do have feelings, but they're not extreme. Because my sister, who's just younger than I, has always has had extreme feelings. When she was 3 years old, she could hold her breath and pass out. Everything was big, and dramatic, and so I was adverse to that because it a lot of times ruined our holidays, or it was a pain in the neck to have a sister like that. So I didn't want to be that.
Mhm.
So I had tempered all my feelings to be nothing. But then through this project, I was able to start finding them, what feelings I do have. Pretty good, huh? That was a
Oh,
good
that's
project.
beautiful. That was a great project. And I'm so glad she heard you and she
Yep,
said, I can help you. And she did help you. And she met you where you are, which is what education is,
exactly.
right? At Dukara, bring out of the child where the child is, bring out and then keep building upon that. I
Yep.
love that. That's beautiful. You said something before that's really I wanted to just compliment you on, and I don't mean like sugary compliment. I mean telling the truth here. You said you had a different way of speaking with each group. You also have said, it wasn't okay to be yourself. So you learned what was needed by each group. And then you said you didn't feel so good about yourself doing that. I understand that because when I do that, I feel like I'm playing. I'm not playing, but I'm pretending to be something that I'm not. And when they like me, they like the image, my image, not who I am. However, I
Exactly.
want to congratulate you and I want to congratulate me for having the wherewithal, call it courage, call it intelligence, call it survivorship, call it creativity, call it genius, whatever you want to call it, girl.
Intuition, I think it was intuition that was coming out and, telling me you are not feeling. What's wrong with you? Get some help,
Wow.
at that time. And so that was intuition to me.
And that intuition is a large part of who you are.
Right.
When you listen to your intuition, what happens?
I make big changes
Which you have made, just if people have not been with us for a while. What was one of the biggest changes you've made in the last couple months?
in the last couple of months. I stopped going to my job, and this last week I actually resigned from it, and now I'm going my own way, doing
Which is a
story
very
time, what I want to
in
do.
you're doing what you've always wanted to do, and you chose to go through the brokenheartedness of saying goodbye to something that you had loved for decades. You had
Yeah.
loved Head Start and how Head Start helps each child unfold to become who she's meant to be.
And
And you
they
were
help me
so,
unfold too. I mean, Head Start is a human potential program.
yeah.
At the very bottom of the mission is to grow people, teachers and children.
And to have respect for each person where she is. So it's
Right.
not like one person is the ideal. It's like, yeah, you got this going, great. Denise got this going, great. You know,
Good at this part. You're good
yeah,
at that part.
we'll put
You
it
know,
together. What do you think a team is?
something really exciting that happened recently. One of my friends, because I also, something that changes about me a lot is I have moved across the country from California to Toledo to Richmond, Virginia to all back and
Phoenix.
forth across the country like 5 times. And so when I make a big change, it's a big change, you typically. And but it's always been for the improvement to authenticity, to my true self expression. So there's that,
And, and what does that tell you about yourself?
that I have resilience
And
and
what's
that I'm
resilience?
learning and growing. I'm on the continuous improvement program. I learned that concept at Head Start too, that we're on the continuous improvement program. Lifelong learner is another way people say it.
I really am listening. And I feel like when we're really fortunate as little kids, we have somebody that sees us. And the person sees right through our eyes, right into who we are, right into the
Right.
soul. And
They
in your
love
case,
us.
they love us for who we are. And I still ask that question a lot of times. Who was it when you were young that saw you, that saw you? And people almost always have somebody. And it could have been
It was
like in
my
my,
Aunt Martha, and there was a woman down the street that saw me sometimes named Chris. I did have people along the way that saw me. Yeah,
sweet, you had Aunt Martha that, as we learned last week, used to
right.
make chocolate dripping,
Biscuits.
biscuits dripping with chocolate.
So good.
And
And
she
butter.
loved you with you, and you got to spend time with her. You know, that was beautiful. I had just a tiny thing because I didn't have people that could see me because I was so exquisite at managing my image. Not often, but often enough, people would say to me, "Is anything wrong?" And I'd say, "Oh no, where? Oh no, everything's fine." But I would remember in a crystalline moment what it felt like for somebody to see that something was wrong. I knew I had no choice but to say, "There's nothing wrong. No, everything's fine." Because that's what my family taught me. We're taught, as Dr. Claudia Black says, dysfunctional families tell kids, don't you dare feel. Don't have any feelings. You can't have feelings. Why? Because if I had showed my feelings, I'd be vulnerable, or people wouldn't like it if I showed certain feelings like anger. So feelings were taboo. The second thing that was taboo was telling anybody else. I had to keep the secrets. No accident that there's a saying, we're only as sick as our secrets. And the third thing that was really sad, Janice, is we learned not to trust. And the worst about that is, just like you were saying, we didn't trust ourselves.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
How did you come to trust yourself?
Um, I really think the best thing that I learned that helped me to learn to trust myself is yoga.
Oh, because
Because you're fully yourself and dependable.
what makes you fool of yourself in yoga?
The breathing and um I do Kundalini yoga, which is movement yoga. And
Hmm.
so, which is also part of my neurodivergence, like rocking is
Hmm.
part of it. And some of these movements are STEM, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
so it was like an acceptable way to STEM doing yoga. And
Hmm.
part of it is meditating on the breath and connecting all the way up to the universe and then all the way down to the center of the earth and be grounded. And so I found safety right here.
Area that self-acceptance and coming home to ourselves is a taboo. And once we get beyond the taboo, there's heaven. There's heaven. When you, just in case folk listening are not familiar with the word STEM, what did you mean?
Like autistic people, you are more obvious in their stimming. They might do this or even tapping is a kind of a stim, right?
And how do you spell that?
It's
STIM?
right. Yeah, I think it's short for stimulate.
Yeah, yeah. Okay,
I
that helps
think.
to know.
Yeah,
So it's a way
it's
of
stimming.
stimulating.
It's like
Mhm.
making your right, focusing on a something, a mantra or a movement or a tap, a sensation
Mhm.
to the point to get comfortable. They use that to maybe shut out other things that are because the brain is like so crazy or whatever. So sometimes stimming will shut down some of the extra thoughts.
So it's stimming, as I understand it, it's stimulating the parts of us that are healing for us, that are helpful to us, and it's eliminating the parts that are not. So, for example, I'm sure that I was stimming in all those classes when I would, in elementary school, when I'd sit in the back row whenever I didn't get assigned to another row. I'd sit in the back row, and if the teacher was blah, 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 I would watch in the wintertime, literally watch the progress of the Jack Frost forming on the windows.
Right.
And I would look at that and feel like, oh my God, this art is being created
Right before your eyes.
right before my eyes. And it's so beautiful. And I would try to draw it and I couldn't capture it. It was so
So we
stunning. And
pay
that,
attention to things that not everybody pays attention to that's helps us.
and a child will pay attention to what matters to that child. And it might seem like the silliest thing, but it's not. I was talking with a father of a 3-year-old, and I asked him what his son really loves. He said, well, and then he said, I guess it's movement. Anything that moves, my son loves that. It's great.
Like
Um,
watching a fan.
like watching a fan, like trying to understand why wheels would make something
Right.
move. So I shared with his father, I said, when I was a little girl, I got to hold a gyroscope. And I was so fascinated. If you haven't seen them, a gyroscope is this like sphere that you spin and it just keeps spinning within itself. It's not quite a top, but it just keeps its own movement going. And I wanted someone to help me understand how can that be? I mean, it seemed to me it was much bigger than just a gyroscope. How can something in and of itself sustain itself? Because here I was being killed off in different ways every day. When I'd go
Right.
home, my father would come into my bedroom at night, and I'd die. I'd
Right.
me, the
Yeah, I
little girl.
separated out. I was in a up in the corner of the room, not in my body.
Right. And that little corner of the room was the smartest, safest place we could go to. Or for me, it was so scary. It's probably scary for every child that faces this, but it was so scary that I would literally see myself somehow going through the window, out the window, and up through the heavens and up to the moon until I could keep going, because I had this image that heaven had all these happy, happy, happy lyre playing, harp playing angels, and that they'd be so happy to see me if I could just make it there. Somebody would be happy to see me. So that's the journey that I took up through the sky. Sometimes I'd swing on a star, sometimes I'd swing on the moon. And I had this great fantasy. So when I saw the Little Prince, the drawings of that, I said, oh, I've
Uh,
been there. And look at my earrings. I've been
right.
there.
Yep.
We have things we do that comfort us. And sometimes the things we do that comfort us become our livelihoods.
Right.
I mean, I don't think I've ever said this before, but part of my thing is part of my love as a writer is that when I write, I aim for for there to be music in the writing, for the words to sound
Melodic.
alive and to sound melodic and to sound like there's meaning in the sound of them. And I've listened to people like Martin Luther King Jr. I've listened to Black preachers, doing the call and response thing. I've listened to Aretha Franklin. I've listened to people who are really powerful speakers, and I get it, and writers. And I get it that they're bringing up through their words all kinds of connections.
But you are
Beautiful.
that person too. When you're in front of a stadium full of people, you're when you talk, all those people are like,
Thank
because
you.
I've just
And
been at conference, I've been at a couple, 3, 4 sessions with you in conference, and everybody's watching and listening, and you're having impact.
And you know what? I think there's a similar, thank you. And I think there's a similar thing going on with everybody who's been traumatized as a child. It's like you found your capacity to tell stories. I found my capacity to tell the truth
Right,
in a way that it connects with other people's truths. And given that telling the truth was taboo for me, given that knowing the truth was taboo for me, my father literally said to me, "You did not see that, daughter. You didn't see that
right,
happen." And I'm sure that he did something that made it so powerfully clear to my older sisters that, because you don't usually just commit incest with one person in the family, you
right.
know?
Yeah, both of
So
my
it,
sisters deny. Well, one of my sisters says yes. My other sister and brother deny. But
right. So one of my sisters is dead, and she died from an autoimmune disease, and she survived by having what was called dissociative amnesia. She couldn't remember anything. It's so there it is, and we're coming close to the end, but there it is that one of the things we can do as survivors is to stop running. And let me put that in a more healing way, because I didn't feel like I was running. I felt I was surviving. I felt like I did what I did because it's the only way I knew to stay alive. And the message I got in my family was, you got two choices. You're dead or you're alive. And the only person that's going to keep you alive is you, because the only person that cares about you is you. I also got the message, and you got to pay your dues for that. For staying alive, you're going to owe somebody here.
right, right. Especially women.
It's what is that?
Um, we're supposed, I mean, it's changed a lot, but I was expected to be married and have children, and I didn't really need a good education. That's what I didn't need to be a good student because I was just going to be a wife. But I was like 12 years old, which I loved housekeeping, and like I did all the ironing in our house. I loved ironing the clothes for my mom. And she would have friends over and they would say, "Oh yeah, when you get married." And I'd say, I am not getting married. This does not look like a good deal for me.
I'm with you on that. My parents had this thing, I think it was a class thing, that each one of their daughters had to go to college. We had to get a college degree. It didn't matter what it was in, as long as we got the baccalaureate degree. And then after that, the very clearly stated message was you're on your own. I always tell the very heartbreaking story to me about my sister Lynn, who wanted to be a doctor from the get go. She became a doctor, but only after she went through this and that degree and that degree. Finally, she became a doctor. But my father said to her, and she said this at my father's memorial. I was really surprised she said it out loud because my father had this reputation of being a perfect father and had all these daughters with all these degrees and all this stuff. And Lynn said, no, I told him I wanted to be a doctor. And he said without hesitation, you're on your own, daughter. And we were all on our own. If we wanted to do anything beyond undergraduate school, we did that on our own. So I got that message loud and clear. I knew if I was going to law school, I'd be paying for it myself. If I'm going to get a PhD, I'd be everything. I would be paying for myself.
Yeah, mine
And
was the opposite. No expectation of college. They felt like college uh, contributed to my demise in a way that it turned me into a socialist.
I can't be talking with you anymore. Oh,
Right. And yeah, it took a long time for my mom to be proud that I went to college.
I'm glad she
Interestingly,
could do that.
she
My father
finally did come to it, right? But yeah, they didn't like it.
My father was so defended. He had such hatred for me that he could never say, I'm proud of you that you got your law degree. I'm proud of you that you're an assistant. I'm proud of you that you wrote this. He could never do that. His
Yeah,
need for control and to be superior as a narcissist. Well, I think that's it. As a narcissist,
right. They can't.
nobody else exists.
Yeah, my mom could not, like, I had to squeeze that out that she's proud finally, like, because I heard her tell a friend. But to me, she does not tell that
Apparently,
she's
it's
proud.
okay to tell others because I was saying to a cousin of mine, I said, my father didn't love me. He couldn't love me. Oh, no, that's not true. He was proud of you. I said, well, he never said that to me. Oh,
Right,
yes. But you see, what he was doing was completely acting as a narcissist. If he could tell people what his progeny had done, he was saying, this is
right.
me.
This is a reflection of me. Right,
And we
right.
got
But
this.
to tell me I'm proud of you, or
So,
what?
so here's the challenge, and let's go here with this. Let's close this program with this, Denise, because we've talked about powerful number of things that have gotten us here. Given all the negativity, and that's just a word, given all of the blows and the shaming gestures and the put downs and the smack across the face and the there's just horrible shaming that trauma survivors get. How on earth did you? How on earth did I? And how on earth did the people listening find that we were worthwhile?
I don't know. It's something inside. And Head Start really ignited that continuous improvement idea, and it was so helpful. I'm not stuck like this. I can improve this, and in manageable way, one goal at a time, or right.
And you said something about intuition. How did your intuition serve you well in terms of finding your worth?
Yeah. My intuition just wakes me up to a fresh nature every day, nature is continuous improvement. And I think that, my intuition knows I should go outside. I should go for a walk. That nature will demonstrate just what we need. And I know
That's
you spend a lot of time in nature, walking, all that too.
walking and
And when you were a kid,
so time, honey, so that is the way that I survived because sanity was out there. And today, all I have to do is go on. I mean, I'm constantly posting photographs that I take of things up close because as a child, I would look at things up close. So, and see the beauty in them. And even before Meg Wheatley talked about fractals, pieces of things like ferns have a shape and it keeps repeating. I was so familiar with that. The first time I ever went to Europe and I saw archway within archway within archway, I said, I've been seeing this my whole life. This is beautiful. I want to
right?
say that for me, you've talked about intuition and you've talked about one step at a time and believing in that. What I have done is uncovered what was always there. I believe it was always there. I believe that and I talk about how, believe it, children, every baby has a birthright to joy. Every baby has a right to find her way. And so I've been applying that to other people for years. And then I said, you know what? Me too. And beneath everything is this person who's emerging at age 78 telling the truth. And every time I talk with you, every time I talk with other people, every time I go to a trauma survivors meeting, every time I speak to 1,000 people or 50 people, every time I write something, every time I just have a conversation with somebody on the street, I'm going to the place where we can connect.
Right.
And I believe that connection is like the birthright to joy. One of the opportunities I have almost daily is to connect. When I connect soul to soul, like with you, I mean, I just feel like we're just sitting here having, we're on earth at the same time and we're having this conversation that's true.
We
Doesn't get much.
reflect one another
We reflect one another
like
and we have,
mirrors. Like
yeah,
mirrors.
so say more about that.
Oh, I used to have a group on AOL, which we called Mirrors, and it was incest survivors. And
Yes.
it was just that I see you, you see me, and we find what's common.
Brown bear, what do you see?
I
I see
see a
sadness.
red.
I see the heartbreak in you. I see the heartbreak in me.
Right.
Brown bear, what do you see?
I see the healing that has happened in you. Mostly what I see in you is that joy. Like when I only knew you in the context of a before the 4 years of chatting this way, only in the context of a group thing, you were demonstrating joy, that joy is still
Awesome.
available.
You got it, girlfriend. And even when I didn't feel like I was joyous, I knew I could get beyond myself to that. And that's the stark thing because for some of us survivors, we don't make it. And I
Right.
have faced times when I didn't know if I was going to make it. I just didn't know if I was going to make it. And that's a deep question we can leave our listeners with. What is it in you that reminds you that your life is worth living? And as Denise does her story times 3 times this week,
3 times this week,
and I sit
Thursday,
down,
Friday, Saturday.
right, and those children are all honored by that, as I sit down and write a chapter of my book, not my book, I'm co-authoring another book about joy. And I'm going to write about how people pleasing is not the pathway.
Right.
It's an
It's
escape.
not.
It's
No,
it's temporary.
it sends you down the wrong path.
And the
But,
good
I mean, we have to find our place in the world too. We do have to feel it out and find our place because we did not get love just automatic.
What is people pleasing but looking for love? It's just
Right,
looking for how can I make this person happy? Maybe if that person's happy, maybe she can shine some happiness on me. But when it feels like there's a transaction beneath the surface, like I got to do this for you, it's a quid
right.
pro quo, but it doesn't feel right. What I love, I'm sure what you love is being with kids and they just automatically.
Yeah, they just are open joy. Yeah, there's just a look that they look at me with that makes me so fulfilled.
I hear you, sweetheart, and you're going to have a lot of that in your life now. And
Yep,
I find that with adults, not
right.
always, but almost every day. Okay, sweetie, we need to sign off. Denise, if you were to, no, don't worry about getting anything right or wrong, but what would you call this program?
Uh, sharing our healing.
Got it. Okay. Girl, love you, and I'll see you next week. And let's get in touch with some of our old buddies to see if we can have them join us. All those people
Yeah,
from,
I'll write Rob a note. He's written me notes before. I can write him a note.
oh, good, good, good. And Nick and Honor, all those people will get in touch. And
Yeah,
if you're
I don't know.
listening,
There might be one guy, Ryan. I think I have
Ryan,
Ryan's. I think
get,
he became my Facebook friend.
yes, he did. I'm quite sure he did.
And
So,
sometimes I'll see a picture of him and his girlfriend. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So I could
yeah.
probably find him on Facebook too and say, hey, did you know? But I don't know how to send the link.
You know what? I'm going to link you, if you don't already have it, to Rosa, who's my
Yeah, she's in, I
sister.
have her in my email, and I guess I could just forward that email.
You could just forward the email, or
Okay.
just write to Rosa. I'll be talking with her tomorrow morning, and I'll say this to her. Just write to her and say, "Can you send me a link so that whenever I want to tell people about the program, I can send them the link." I mean, that's what I'm doing because I don't know how to do it. I don't. You
Or
know what?
can we post it? Can we post the link like
That
on
would
the
be
page,
that would
on
be
your
great too.
page?
Hmm.
Since you're the one,
That,
yeah, if
yeah.
we could find out how to post it on your page every week, then people could just join it. Because
Click.
that's how we joined with Rob.
Right.
He posted it on his page. And so if we followed his page, we saw that link every week. And then
Smart
we
move.
could just go to it.
So I will ask Rosa about that. And also, if
How we
you're
can
looking,
make that. Yeah.
yep, I'll ask her how to do that. And if you can get from her just a direct link so that you can, I don't know how to save these links, but if you can save it somehow, then we'll do this. Okay, my friends, if you've
All right.
joined us from South Africa, or India, or Hawaii, or Antarctica, wherever you are, thanks for being with us. And we'll see you next week.
Yep.
Thank you, Denise. Love you,
Thank
girl.
you. Love you too.
Saying, okay, I'm going to stop recording now. Last week we did a great program, and guess what? It
We
didn't get
forgot to
recorded.
record it.
I did. Okay, here I go, turning it off.